Everyone. Thank you for attending our webinar. My name is Chad Littleton, and I am the Technical Sales Representative here at Front Panel Express. Today's webinar, we will be covering the basics of designing enclosures with our Front Panel Designer software. We will spend the next 30 minutes going over the types of enclosures we provide, as well as going through a demonstration of how to design an enclosure, and then we will open up the floor to answer any questions that you may have. Scott Hovland, who is our operations manager, will assist in the presentation, and he will help answer questions at the end. We offer 4 types of enclosures here at Front Panel Express. We offer a side profile 1, side profile 2, a housing profile 1, and housing profile 2s. For a side profile 1 enclosure, the 2 side panels are made by profiles that are a set height of 42 millimeters. Hopefully you can see that in the bottom right detail. The profile slots, or the profiles, come with slots for placing PCB boards, and they need to be designed as the same length as the top and bottom panels. For this enclosure, the front, back, top, and bottom are actually made by designing panels. The top and bottom panels slide into the grooves, and the front and back are mounted to the profiles with self-tapping screws holding the enclosure together. You can see that on the bottom left detail. Our next type of enclosure is a side profile 2 enclosure. The only difference between a side profile 1 and a side profile 2 enclosure is the height of the profile. You can see that our side profile 2 has an outside dimension of 56 millimeters. The side profile 1s are a standard 1U height, and the side profile 2 are a standard 1.5U. The next 2 enclosure types that we offer are our housing profile enclosures. The enclosures designed using housing profiles allow customers to make the enclosures with any dimensions. For housing profile 1 enclosures, the cover panels, which I will refer to as top, bottom, and sides, are supported through slide-in profile slots, and the side panels, which we will call front and back for this presentation, are mounted to the profiles with machine screws holding the enclosure together. You can notice on the profile, or the detail on the right, that the actually slide-in slot is 1.6 millimeters, and we'll get into that a little more later in the presentation. Housing profile 2 enclosures are the final enclosure, and they allow for easy access to your internal components. The enclosures, or for these enclosures, one panel is supported through that slide-in profile slot, and the other panel is secured with a series of screws and slide nuts, and you can see that in the detail again. Both housing 1 profile, or profile 1s and 2s, the lengths of the profile need to be the same as the top and bottom panels. You can use a combination of these. For example, if you want to only access through the top, you can use a combination of 2 housing profile 2s on the top and 2 housing profile 1s along the bottom. So now that we've described the 4 types of profiles, we are going to jump into our front panel design software, and we will show you the basic steps to designing a housing profile 1 enclosure. We're going to look at the back panel design. This panel will set the height and width of the enclosure. We will show you how to place the mounting holes so they secure to the profiles properly. we will briefly touch on the front panel design, the top, bottom, and side panel design, and then we'll go over the placing cavities to accommodate for the profiles. There are a few ways to place the cavities, and we will talk about the difference between front side cavities and back side cavities and their importance. So you can see we have a blank panel on there. We're going to use this to set the overall dimensions of our enclosure. On the screen now you'll see our front panel properties window that appears when you go to create a new panel. We went ahead and put the width, height, and thickness in there. You'll see it gives you the option to select your type of material and color. We've selected aluminum anodized in a natural color. Our profiles are available in natural anodized aluminum and black anodized aluminum. Down below that, you will see that we've entered a corner radius of 2 millimeters. All 4 of our enclosures, you will need to add this on the front and back panels to match the profiles. So after we've defined all the front panel properties, the next thing we'd want to do is place the mounting screw holes. To do this, we would select the drill hole command located on the toolbar. Then we would hit M to place the drill hole. And the first window you see is determine the reference point. This allows you to place your drill holes. For housing profile 1s, the mounting holes will need to be placed 5.2 millimeters in from each corner of the panel in order for the profiles to fit properly. So we've done that, and the next pop-up you'll see is the drill hole properties. We are going to select the M5 countersunk screws. And we will place the drill hole. Once the drill hole is placed, I can now hit N7 on the keypad, which will change your origin. You can see that it has moved to the top left. And now we will go ahead and place another drill hole. You'll notice we're changing the Y to a negative 5.2. Everything else is left the same, and the second drill hole is placed. Now I can go ahead and copy the 2 drill holes that I've created. I will group them together by right-clicking and grouping. I will then change my origin to the right center by hitting N6 on the keypad, and now I can right-click, select move. I will enter the dimensions again where I want that placed. Notice that the apply action to copy is checked, and you can now see that we have all 4 mounting holes placed on our front panel or back panel. So we're not going to go through designing it, but on our next slide you'll see our completed back panel. Once we're done with that, we can go ahead and begin the design of our front panel. Now you can save the back panel off as a front panel, remove all your objects, and at least you'll have the mounting screws on there. So we've done that. Sometimes the customers will want the front panel larger in order to mount the enclosure to a rack. So we've created an oversized front panel, and we're going to quickly show you how to copy the mounting holes from the back panel. We'll go ahead and select them all. Group them together. with the right-click grouping. We will do a Control-C to copy, jump over to our front panel, and hit Control-V. You'll notice the origin set in the center of the panel, and we can go ahead and move it to the center of the panel by selecting 0, 0. And the drill holes have copied over. Now we could finish the design on our front panel. Once the front and back panels are designed, we can begin to create our top and bottom panels. So you'll notice here on the object properties on the right that we've made the panel width 20.2 millimeters smaller than the back panel. That is to account for the profiles. And you will also notice there's no corner radiuses on there. It's only necessary on the front and back panels. Since our material that we have selected is 3 millimeters, we will need to place cavities on each side in order for the panels to slide into the housing profiles. To do this, you will select the Insert Cavity command found on the toolbar. Again, we'll hit M to place it. First, you'll be asked to determine the reference point for this cavity. We will go ahead and put it at 1.35 millimeters in the X direction and 152.4 millimeters in the Y direction. Since the panel is 304.8 millimeters, this will be placed in the middle of the panel. Next, you will be asked to specify the cavity properties. We will give it a width of 3.7 millimeters. This is better explained in the manual. A height of 307.80. Notice that we've made it 3 millimeters longer than the height of the panel. This is to allow for a clean edge and no burrs on the panel. We'll give it a depth of 1.5. Since we've selected 3 millimeters, and as I mentioned before, the cavity or the profile slot is 1.6, we need to get that material to 1.5 millimeters so it can slide into that profile. And then we've added a corner radius of 1.5 millimeters, and that is, since it overhangs the panel, it will not take a direct 90. It will actually round the corners off the panel. We will click Place on Reverse Side and hit OK. Now that we have this cavity, we can go ahead and copy it to the other side. We'll select it, right click, and we're going to mirror the object. We will mirror horizontally on the center of the front panel, and notice that the Apply to Copy is checked. Now we have both cavities placed on the panel, and the panel looks good to us unless you wanted to add other cutouts or engravings on there. Notice that the cavities that show up on the panel are cross-hatched. This is an indication that the cavities are placed on the reverse side. Anything that you see in the design software that's cross-hatched will let you know that it is placed on the reverse side. The reason we designed the cavity past the edge of the panel is to ensure that there is no burrs left on the panel and that the edge is smooth. For housing profile 2s, it's explained, the dimensions are explained in the manual, but they will be larger and it will go over the dimensions in the manual. One thing to remember when designing your enclosure is that each panel needs to be designed from the outside of the enclosure looking in. So now we'll briefly go over our side panels. We've already created that. Again, you would make this 20.2 millimeters smaller in height than the back panel to account for the profiles. There's one more example we're going to quickly touch on, and that is a front panel with a backside cavity on there. You'll notice there's cavities placed on the top and bottom of that. This is a type of enclosure where you can create those, and the front or the top and bottom panels will actually slide into those cavities to add additional support. So now that we have all our panels designed, we could go into our ordering program. From here, you'd be able to select the files that you want to add to your enclosure order. Once you have the panels loaded, you can go into search for items, go to categories and select profiles, and you would be able to select the type of profile you wish to order. Notice below it'll ask you for the length of the profiles. This will have to match the length of the top, bottom, and sides. Once you've selected your profiles, you can add those to the shopping cart as well. The next thing you would need to remember to include is your assembly kits. This is our screw packages as well as any housing brackets, which are also explained in the manual, and other screw packets that you would need. Once you have all the panels and hardware selected, you can complete the ordering process to place your order or request a quote. I want to mention that there is a manual for enclosure assembly located on our website. You can find that by clicking on the support tab, the tips and tricks, and the handbook for designing enclosures. I would recommend downloading the PDF. A lot of the information that we've covered is in there, as well as additional information.
Hello everyone, my name is Scott Hovland, and I will be covering your questions and answers. In order for me to answer the questions, you'll have to type them in. Basically, a few things I can also cover is what colors and lengths Chad had mentioned. We have black and natural anodized, and we also have minimum length of our profiles is 1 inch and up to 48 inches. Side profiles, all of the side profiles use the assembly kit that has self-tapping screws, and housing profiles use machine screws M5. The customer had asked, I had ordered an enclosure a while ago, but it was not very supported. Only 4 screws for the front and back held it together. Is there a better way to do this? Yes, you can also, in the manual, there is a housing bracket. This will also, you can place this in support throughout your front and back panels to give it the support between the profiles. This is also the example that Chad expressed with the side profile front panel, that you may put the grooves in the front so you don't have the countersinks on the front of your panel that you're trying to display. Can I have the edges tapped when I'm using thicker material? Yes. In this case, you would have to select customer material and design the panel as if it were the side of the panel. And then basically with the customer material checked, we will know to add the holes on the side of the panel. You can use the remarks tab in the front panel properties to detail your notes so we can get it precisely how you would request it. Can you review the mounting screw setup again? We will go back to the front panel designer. Let's just go ahead and delete these and we'll start again. So by selecting the drill hole properties, there are several ways you can enter the drill hole and your dimensions. As Chad had mentioned, select M, and this will give you a window that will pop up and give you to allow you to put in the dimensions. You may also change your origin and different locations of the panel by using the N and the numbers, corners, so 1, 7, 9, and 3 to represent the corners. And then you may also, once you selected your drill hole, you can also select the corner and enter coordinates by the corner of the panel. Then you can see a little square box up here. Select your standard countersink if necessary, or custom if you prefer. You may do some manual sinking parameters. Once the corner is placed, you may also right-click and move. This will also get you to your dimension screen. And you may also use this just as the cavities and mirror the object based off the center of the front panel. So in this case, we want to mirror vertically, select center front panel, and keep our apply to copy. Now we can also do the same thing from left to right, grab the group. You may or may not group it, and then you can also mirror as well. And this horizontally, center front panel, apply action to copy. Is there an option to use threaded inserts in place of self-tapping screws? This is an extrusion that only is not a complete hole. We can set them up as customer material and mill them. If you would like to place an insert yourself, you may. On the housing profiles, we actually thread the material and use machine screws. So just the side profiles alone use the self-tapping screws. Please show us how to use custom fonts. In this case, we have our normal function that gives you the options to select your fonts. In this case, if you don't prefer to use any of these, you may use the HPGL function. And this is on the toolbar, insert HPGL. In this case, you would have to use a separate piece of software to import a vector file, and then you can create your entire custom design or logo. We also have this on the tips and tricks on how to import HPGLs. Can you please explain again when to place the cavity on the front and back of the panel? Now in this case, you may use a piece of 1.5 material, and this can slide directly in the slots, or if you use a 3.0 material, you can leave the flush along the top. So it really depends on your, like in your example on your right here, if you want your material to be flush with the top of the profile, or if you want it to sit below. And on the housing profile, it is the same. Similar to the housing profile 2, you would place 2 millimeters on top of where the slide nuts go in, so you can have a nice flush edge next to the profile. So it's really just how you would prefer to have your enclosure stand out. Have used side profiles on several projects. Would you like to see dimensional drawings updated to include PCB slot spacings? The slot widths are detailed, but not the spacing between the slots. We'll fix the drawing and update. For now, we will email you the dimensions, DXF dimensions to Michael. And this is also on our forum. What vector file formats can be imported as HPGL? This needs to be a PLT file to import into our HPGL. There are several softwares that support this, such as CorelDRAW and Adobe Illustrator. Also, we have a question regarding the housing brackets. Now, this is in our enclosure manual, and this will have a dimension off the top and bottom of how the distance between the front panel and the edge of the part to associate to get the same distance and support and have extra strength. This is also placed between your discretion on how supportive you need this, so you can space them out. We recommend a minimum of 100 millimeters if it's a really large enclosure. Which coating of screws are available? We offer a black, nickel, and zinc coating screw, and these are also in the handbook that references each profile and assembly kit packages to order your enclosure. We also offer several different of the varieties of multiple quantity if you just would like to purchase the screws instead of assembly kits. Can you powder coat the profiles? We powder coat the side profile. The problem here is to make sure that we tape off the edge so your front or your top and bottom panel may slide in there. But yes, this is available. You would have to create the front panel, then select your dimensions, and then you would have to put in the remarks you would like to have this as a profile that you've selected on your order to be powder coated. And then this will give you your powder coating pricing as well as an opportunity to put your instructions. How can we ensure the vector files are scaled and the same as front panel when we want to import? I've had scaling issues in the past. It's one-to-one from the graphic program to FPD. You can also use our graphic service of $30 to import the vector files, and it's $180 for bitmap to create a vector file and create your milling lines. May we mill on the side profiles? Yes, you can. You would just design this as customer material in your front panel property window and just enter the size and dimensions of your actual profile. So the side profiles, if you want to have a fan or something, you can just create your objects and then reference in the remarks for production would like to have this milled on the profile on your order. How do you make a 3-point equilateral triangle and drill hole on each of the points? This question we will follow up with the person directly to give you a better example of how to do this. Is there some trick to reduce the cost to minimum while designing, like using the same hole size when possible? Always, when designing, a good idea in creating your holes is keeping in consideration the size of the tools. On most objects you select, such as this drill hole property, it doesn't give you an option. So if you have, it's going to grab the tools, the largest tool necessary to create this. Now, for example, on a rectangle, if you select a rectangle and have the options for automatic selection tool, all that does is select the largest tool available. Now, you can see here, if you place this rectangle on the panel, this is using the 3mm cutter, you can grab the price and see exactly what this rectangular hole is. So this is 52 cents. And for example, you create this with a smaller tool, the price should increase because of the more area to mill. So in this case, it's 77 cents. So you can always use this as a tool to come back and redefine the pricing of your enclosure. And again, on your cavities, always make sure to have them stick out past. In this case, there's nothing that impacts the panel, and this is okay to stick out past the panel when it's milling. And always select the largest corner radius to make sure that you're using the largest tool available. Do you have any plans to develop a gasketed or O-ring panel design for wet environments in the near future? In this case, this is something that you can do yourself already. There's an import free contour tool on the top, and what this tool does is allows you to import the DXF design of your choice, and then when you also place this on your panel, you can select it as a cavity and then your depth within the part to create that O-ring. There's also you can also do this with the rectangles and create the panel. So if you would like to have, for example, a groove, you can place several rectangular objects throughout the panel and create your design. In this case, you can also select edge machining, and this will give you your nice radius on the top to remove all the sharp edges so you don't destroy your gaskets. Do you have selection of pre-designed boxes or templates? Yes, on the Front Panel Designer website, right below the tips and tricks, there's the templates for enclosures. And this has several different examples that you can also download the zip file and use the basic setup to continue from there. And such as the side profile with the grooves, you may select the side profile 1 option here, and this will also give you an example of how to design your enclosure to have grooves in your front panel for support. I don't like the holes I have to place for the supporting brackets. Are there other ways to do this? And again, this is the side profile 1 example that we had showed. Of course, if you're trying to do a housing profile or housing profile 2, this gets a little more complicated. But of course, you can always give us a call with any questions, and we'd be happy to support you. And to explain that a little more, you would design your top and bottom panels a little bit longer than your profiles, so the material would just slide directly in the grooves. This would also require a thicker front panel. In a lot of cases, it would at least need to be 2.5 millimeters in thickness. Now, if you use a 1.5 material thickness for your front panel, you would have to select a drill hole, just a through hole for your panel to eliminate the profile of the cavities. For example, if we set our properties to 1.5, which our panel's too large. And now in this case, if you select your cavity, you'll see here that the screw will actually come in contact with the profile, and this will not be a tight fit. So in this case, you would just select a standard hole and give it 0.3 for clearance of your screw, and you can just have a panhead screw hold your enclosure together. And these are also available in the types of heads you can choose from our hardware in the enclosure manual. Do you assemble the enclosures? We briefly put them together just to help identify problems before we ship it out. We do not bolt any of the enclosures together. We do not use any hardware when we do this. This is just a QC measure to try and eliminate mistakes and help better support our customers. As far as typical assemblies, we do not do this here at Front Panel Express. Would you please explain your quantity discounts? So here in our pricing, you can see based off quantity, between 5 to 9 pieces, you get 10% on up to 30%. Any enclosure or panels that are over 30 pieces, please request a quote, and we will do a custom quote based off the actual panel design to get a closer, to be more precise with the machine time and give you better pricing. We've answered all of the questions that have been asked through this webinar. Any other questions, please just email us or call us, and we'd be happy to support you in any way we can. We'd like to thank you for attending the webinar today. And again, please call with any questions. Thank you very much.